Turn my
All
phone
right.
down.
Welcome to Real Estate Success. I'm your host, Mena Badros, today with Chris Nelson from the Nelson Home Group with Genstone Realty. Chris, great to have you here
Thanks for having me, Mina.
for sure. Chris, I want people to get to know who you are a little bit before we dive into real estate talk.
Yep.
Without mentioning any of your professional accomplishments, can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, Chris Nelson, born and raised right here in the Montgomery County, right outside of Philadelphia area, one county over from you, to be honest. I've been in real estate for quite some time. This is actually what I've done for since I've been legally able to, to have a profession. I'm a father of four children. My wife and I, ironically, or not ironically, we've known each other since middle school.
That's very cool.
So I put that out there first before I tell people that the range of age for my kids anywhere from 22 to 3. you
Wow.
Kind of started all over again. But aside from that, I'm very passionate about things in my community, local businesses, things that are going on, road cyclists in the craft beer. It's pretty much it, man. That's me.
That's awesome. A lot to unpack there. And you've done a lot in your real estate career. What do you do right now? Like, how do you spend your time as a real estate professional?
um, so my business is a little bit different than your the average realtor you'll come into. As I mentioned, 20 some odd years in the industry. I do traditional real estate, regular helping buyers, sellers, investors, but I also represent corporate clients. And by corporate clients, I'm referring to financial institutions, banks, you know, um, hard money lenders who, need to maybe potentially recoup some of their assets. I'm also a real estate coach in the Tom Ferry ecosystem. And I do a lot of BPOs and evaluations to support the REO side of things. So there's also an evaluation arm to my current business.
Well, that is a ton there. Give me 1 second. Actually, I have to take
Yeah.
a pause.
Yep.
I'm probably going to cut this out. All right. I realized my camera lights weren't on.
No, no worries.
No problem. Good thing we're recording, not broadcasting live. All right.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Well, that's a lot there, man. Out of all of those roles that you mentioned, and the hats that you wear, what is it that you enjoy most, or kind of gives you, the most meaningful or rewarding, you know?
Yeah. Recently coaching, right? And that is and I emphasize recent. This is my first year as a coach in the ecosystem. So obviously just part of my personality has always been big on giving back. So being able to give back to other people who had some of the same struggles I've had, that has been extremely rewarding for me. But I also, I really do enjoy the REO side of things. And although that is more of I'm going to use the word grim side of our business, I am unfortunately taking homes back from people who love their home. But I found that what I did love about that part of the industry is that I'm coming in contact with people um, who are in need of something, and usually when people are faced with such adversity like that, they kind of put their head in the sand, hoping that one day they're going to pick their head up and everything magically is going to be okay, right? They need someone who is going to come in there and just make sure that they understand that there are options and that even though they're here at this point in their life, trying to show them that there's things that they can do to get back on track. So I found locking up homes isn't the exciting part, but being the light at the end of someone's tunnel it just ties into that giving back. So I found a way to enjoy that part of the business as long as I approached it with a provide value mindset.
Awesome, love that. Let's talk about coaching for a second, and kind of from your perspective as a coach, what have you noticed has been some of the major pain points or challenges for agents? If you could narrow them down to like three buckets that or categories that you see often.
Mhm. So the biggest is mindset.
Hmm.
The other is lack of structure.
Okay.
And I would say the other big hurdle that most agents have is they're good at a lot of different things, but they're not excellent at one thing, right? So mindset, though, I think is by far the most, and you can relate to that being in this industry where,
Right.
nothing is guaranteed. We can show up, we can give 110% and leave with zero. Right.
Right.
So having a realistic approach, mindset, being, motivated to move the needle constantly, and remembering things like the compound effect, just showing up and doing the
Right.
reps, all those little things. I think that's really the biggest thing, but it's amazing to me how many realtors, say they work 40 hours a week or for whatever that number is, and you really peel back the layers of their schedule, and it's like, you don't work 40 hours a week.
Yeah, yeah. You might be busy 40 hours a week, right? Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right.
So those are the things I think that were probably the biggest that I'm helping people, navigate at this current time, and then apply that to some of the punches that we're all aware of, the threats out there, the lack of inventory, the higher interest rates, just trying to help them use their tools to work through that stuff.
Awesome. Now, can you take us back through your real estate journey? Obviously, you do a lot now. You didn't start doing them all on day one, right?
Yeah.
So can you take us a little bit about how you started and the evolution of your real estate journey?
Yeah. So I'm that prime example. My mother always told me that, I was either going to be dead or in jail if I didn't make some changes in life. Right. Out of high school, I had very little motivation. Went to community college, not sure what I was going to do. Ironically, I went into community college as a communications major, and I'll pick up on that again in a second. And then my mother got to a point where she was like, "Look, you either have to do something or you have to get out the house." And she said, my mother was actually the receptionist for a Remax office here in Montgomery County. She said, there's two guys, and they're looking for an assistant. And why don't you just come in and talk to them? So they agreed to have me come in and speak to them. And then at the end of the interview, they said, "Look, you can show up on Monday, but here's the deal: you got to cut your braids. You got to show up with your hair. Your pants pulled up. All right, mind you, this is 99, 2000, back when big clothes and baggy
Right.
pants were the thing. So I showed up and became their assistant, haircut, and pants on my waist. And I quickly realized that these guys were collecting some pretty handsome checks. And here I am on this side, the conveyancer or the assistant, and I'm doing 70% of what I thought was the work, right? And I'm looking at their check and I'm looking at my check. I'm like, this equation just doesn't make sense. I knew I had more in me. So I decided to go out, get licensed, which I did. I then went out and decided to leave and kind of go out on my own. As I mentioned, I was just their assistant, and I went to Caldwell Banker in Collegeville. And I went out there and I struggled. And a couple months or about a year goes by, and then my house was in foreclosure. I said, "Oh,
Wow.
crap, what am I going to do?" So I looked at that threat and I looked at it as an opportunity. I said, "Well, okay, if I'm not the only one in foreclosure, a lot of people are in foreclosure. There has to be an opportunity here to make money." So I mentioned a minute ago, part of my business is doing evaluations for servicers. So I found out that people were actually driving by my house, taking photos, doing this thing referred to as a BPO. So I said,
What's
"All right,
let's break down for those who might not know, not to cut you off, but what's a servicer? What's a PPO?
So a servicer is the people you generally pay your mortgage to. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Santander, whoever.
Right.
They service the loan for the investor, right? So that's who I'm making my payments to. A BPO is a broker's price opinion, which is an opinion of price from a broker or a licensed agent in a brokerage. So I looked at it and I said, okay, people are driving by my house and they're doing this and they're getting paid for it. Why I can do that. I have the skill set to do that. So I found out how to get involved in there. Long story short, that got my house out of foreclosure. We did several thousand evaluations because this is when things were hot and heavy. And I got my house out of foreclosure. And then I said, well, wait a minute, there's another piece of this business, right? Like, I'm doing the evaluations. How do I get the bricks and sticks? How do I get these properties as listings?
Right.
So I went down that rabbit hole made those connections, and then I started representing. I got my first bank asset. And I remember the asset manager was like, "Oh, you are like a rock star." Little did she know it's because I was the only agent that she gave a property to that didn't have 100 assets, right? I didn't have 100 of these to deal with.
So you would run
So
out and do these evaluations pretty quickly, right? Turn them around quickly.
did it quickly, answered her phone calls, responded to her emails all quickly. She's like, "Wow, this is golden," right? So she
Right.
gave me more. And then that just snowballed. And then that took off and really was the backbone of my business for quite some time until that pipeline slowed up. I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh, wait a minute. I need to do something else or else I'm going to be in foreclosure again." Right. So then I realized that, well, I'm a real estate agent. Why am I not focusing on procuring traditional business? So while the REO thing was kind of going through its ups and downs and inventory here and not there, I said, you know what? I need to be the face of, my community, which is why I
Hmm.
started doing a lot of content creation.
Right.
I know you've seen a lot of my videos. I started
I
putting
love them,
myself
by the
out
way.
there, and that's where I'm at now, man. So that literally that pressure of losing my house really is what sparked the fire under me. Mind you, my 11-year-old was a year old at the time. My wife's like, "What's going on?" So that sparked something in me where I looked at that threat. I didn't let it cripple or buckle me. I found a way to motivate and find business opportunities in that.
Right. That's awesome. Now you found a way to kind of break into the REO side of the things and represent a lot of banks on listings. Not many agents kind of break into that niche, right? So if there's someone out there that was looking to kind of do that, and I think there's a big disconnect between, I guess, the bank and the agents, right? So how can agents, or what steps can they take to kind of position themselves well to get into that side of business?
The first thing I would say, any agent who wants to do this, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, do you really want to do this, right? So I'll answer your question in a second. Keep in mind, it's very emotional, right? As I mentioned, you are putting people out of homes, right? So if you're approaching that the wrong way, you'll get responded to the
Yeah.
wrong way. You also have to have capital, right? You have to be able to maintain. You have to be responsible for grass cuts, snow removals, electric bills, cleaning the toilets, right? So if you're okay with that, you know, it it goes back to that. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm.
So you have to be able to show value to the decision makers, the people who are able to provide assets. So I can tell you, you have to go out there, you have to meet people, you have to meet people in the industry, learn the lingo, go to events, and again, be able to show that you know this industry and that you can take care of that asset for that particular investor. And that's really what it boils down to.
Mm. Awesome. Now, let me put my investor hat on and ask for my investor friends who are buyers, right?
Yeah.
Um, since you kind of get to work on the other side
Mhm.
of things, what can investors do to again also position themselves well to be able to have good relationships with the banks or with listing agents that represent banks to be able to acquire, foreclosure properties? And so I'm sure that's $1 million question. A lot of investors want to know, but what
Yeah.
have you seen on the ground?
I would say in the last year or two, it's been difficult for investors to have that relationship because I'll be transparent. When we weren't allowed to advertise our coming soon properties, that really put a strain on the relationships, right? If I had inventory, even if I wasn't allowing them into the property, if I was just saying, "Hey, Mena, I got 123 Main Street coming up. I think this is something that matches your criteria. This looks like something you would invest in." I'm not really allowed to do that anymore,
Right.
right? Whether it's on my website or it's word of mouth, right? So that really changed what we used to be able to do, right? So the board of the Association of Realtors, NAR, if you're hearing this, we need to have the ability to do that again. We should be the gatekeepers of the inventory. But I would say that it's going to be a little more granular. It's going to take a little more effort for investors if they really want to find out what's out there. And I think that means going to the local courthouses that they want to do business in, or the county courthouses that they want to do business in. Look at what's going on, the filings that are taking place. And I think their best opportunity, especially in this market, is to not wait till it becomes an REO, right? If they can find out that this property is potentially going into or is in foreclosure and is potentially going to be foreclosed on, be boots on the ground and see if you can go provide a service, be of value to that person that's in that home, right? Maybe you can buy it at a discount through a short sale and let the person who's in default rent it back, right? Until
Right.
they can get out of there. And then you can turn around and either rent it out to someone else or flip it. Whatever, every investor has their own different approach. But I think right now where we're at, and this ties into actually a video I just put out the other day, is that right now, the challenge we're having, or not challenge we're having when it comes to foreclosures, it's not a challenge because obviously I don't want people to lose their home, but I'm not getting a lot of properties assigned to me that are foreclosures in the current environment, because here's what's happening. Stats show that foreclosure starts are up, right? That's the headline. Oh, let's scare people. Foreclosure starts are up. People are losing
Yep.
their house. They're not. They're not. Yes, people are having some issues, right? There's inflation, there's unemployment issues we have to worry about, but there's this thing called equity that people have right now. And as long as they don't put their head in the sand, as I mentioned, earlier, too long, where their equity is eaten up by attorney fees and delinquencies and all of that, the foreclosure starts are up. But then what happens, Mena, is people are saying, oh, shoot, we have to do something. Let's call Mena. Let's call Chris. Let's put this house on the market, get our equity, and move on. Right. So the foreclosure starts are up, but the foreclosure completions are way down. And that's where I think that if investors really want to even create an opportunity in that playing field, they have to position themselves somewhere in the middle.
Awesome. I love that. You talked a little bit about what you're doing now. I'd love to know what's next for you.
It's a really good question, Mena. So I think what's next for me is, as I mentioned, I've been doing this 20 some odd years. I just turned 40 this year.
Well, did you start when you were one or something?
If I could have, I probably would have. Hindsight being 2020, right? But I definitely want to be a little bit more disconnected from the day-to-day production. As I mentioned, I've found a passion in coaching. So I think to answer your question, I'd like to continue to build the small team. I'd like to help other people obtain, financial freedom through real estate, whether that's being on a team with me or connecting with someone on my team to build a portfolio